Demi-Leigh Tebow was consumed with winning Miss South Africa. And in 2017, her dreams came true when she was crowned not only Miss South Africa, but also Miss Universe. But little did she know that when she crowned her successor, it would feel like the rug was ripped out from under her.
When Demi-Leigh Nell Peters was crowned Miss Universe 2017, she became internationally known. When she was given the title Mrs. Tim Tebow in 2020, she became the envy of young women across America. It's easy to look at this beauty queen, speaker, and champion for needy children and think her life is a fairy tale. Yet she's candid about her struggles, misplaced identity, the painful loss of her sister, even a narrow escape from carjackers who tried to kidnap her. With her new book, A Crown That Lasts, Demi-Leigh offers an insightful look at true identity versus whatever labels one has.
All right, y'all, I am beyond excited to say that Demi-Leigh Tebow is here on 700 Club Interactive. Demi, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks for having me, Ashley.
Yes,
so fun to be here.
I'm so excited that you're here. It's awesome. All right, well, let's go back a little bit. Let's go back to 2017. It was a pretty big year for you. You were crowned Miss South Africa and Miss Universe. Like, talk about that journey.
It was, man, it was such a whirlwind year. It was a year that I had worked for so long. I gave up speaking my first language, Afrikaans, to prepare to speak English on an international stage. I walked in high heels for way too many hours in the day, okay? Way too many hours. But essentially, you know, you work so hard for that one thing, that degree, that role, that prize, that corner office, whatever that is, you know, to each individual. And then a moment comes where you have to give it back, or maybe it didn't end up working out, or that dream didn't end up realizing like you had hoped, and you're left feeling, well, what now? And what do I show up for when everything I've worked for and showed up for the last however many years is no longer there? And giving back that title was that moment for me.
Yeah, well, first off, how did you even get into pageants? Like, what was life like before Miss South Africa and Miss Universe?
I grew up about 4 hours outside of Cape Town in a teeny tiny town called Sedgefield. The area is nicknamed the Garden Route of South Africa, and it really looks like you're just driving through one big luscious garden. We have one traffic light that's situated on the interstate, and if you swerve out for the chicken, you miss the whole city, the whole town, not even a city at all. You know, my mom and I would buy groceries on weekends on the farmers market. So going from that to then a big city like New York City after I won Miss Universe was definitely a culture shock, definitely a lot to adapt to, definitely a lot of new things, but it was fun. I've always loved traveling and loved seeing the world. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, obviously, you talk about how what that moment was like for you when you hand your crown to somebody else. And you talk about it in the book, like literally no one told you what to do. It's just like, boom, you're not Miss Universe anymore. I guess talk a little bit deeper into what that experience was like for you, maybe a couple months and even a couple years after all that.
You have a whole team of people with you the whole year, and then you hand that crown back to that very rightful next winner. Super deserving. But you're going off stage and you're literally in an instant, as quickly as I gained that crown, that's as quickly as I had to give it back. And I remember trying to find my way just to my dressing room backstage. I didn't, you know, I had this whole team of people escorting me, being with me, helping me, showing me the way to now, oh, I'm on my own here. And I think that was probably a moment that I felt like I had to rely on my self-confidence a lot. And actually that failed me. It failed me so bad, because self-confidence, when you look at the word confidence, just means to have full trust. And I tried to have full trust in one of my most vulnerable moments in my life on myself. And that totally failed me, and I realized that I needed something deeper. I needed something that was trustworthy, that was fixed, that wasn't going to disappear like my crown, that is bigger than myself. And essentially, I had to really dig deep and realize that my true identity is rooted in my faith and who my Maker says I am.
Well, let's talk about your faith. I mean, did you grow up in a Christian home?
Yeah, I did. My parents were divorced, separated when I was really young, but they both grew up Christian, and they both got remarried, and so I grew up in two different Christian households from a young age. But you know, actually, it wasn't until I was about 17 years old that I realized I had maybe a lot of confusion growing up in two different households, and maybe not fully understanding theology that I had kind of taken bits and pieces from all over the country in a sense, where I realized I know Jesus and I love him, but I don't know if I have a personal relationship with him.
That's it,
And I had a lot of doubt in my mind, and we had a very tragic situation where a very dear friend of ours tragically passed away at the end of our 11th grade, and our whole grade or school gathered on the sports field to pray with our youth pastor and to pray over his life and his family. And afterwards, the youth pastor gave an opportunity for anyone that had doubts, and that was me. I felt like he gave that opportunity just for me. He didn't know that. And I realized, you know what, Demi, I don't want to doubt any longer where I'm going to spend eternity. And I put up my hand and I prayed with our youth pastor, and that was the best decision I could have ever made in my life.
So beautiful. I absolutely love that. Well, I wanted to ask you, like, why do you think so many of us, men, women, young, old, I mean, it's not just the younger generation, it's all of us, right? So many of us put our identity in our accomplishments. And that just, I feel, sets us up for failure.
It does.
You know, talk about that. Why do you think we do that?
It's easy. It's accessible. You know,
yeah, that's true.
It's harder to go and find the root of our identity than to just uproot a little weed. It's easier to uproot a little weed than to go and untangle all those, you know, deep-rooted, tangled roots of our identity. I think it's probably just easier. Our life experiences, our circumstances, our accolades, our prizes all form part of our identity, you know, and it's easy when it's surface level. It's easy to put our identity in things that are tangible, in a sense.
That's true. That's so true. And you kind of touched on it a little bit, but you break the book up into 4 different parts: dig, plant, grow, flourish. Talk about why you decided to kind of divide the book that way.
My biggest dream for this book is for it to be applicable to my readers, to their personal stories and their personal lives. Broke this book up into 4 sections: dig, plant, grow, and flourish. And after each section, I give my readers an opportunity to go and apply what they've read into their own lives. And that was something that was very important to me. I wish I could tell you I used that analogy because I've got a green thumb.
I was going to ask.
I'm just a very practical person.
Love
you know,
that.
and when you think of
good.
digging, it's messy. It's untangling those roots, planting new seeds of truth in our lives to essentially give that time to grow. In that growing phase, we still have to prune the plant. We still have to give it water. We still have to put in some work. And then when you think of the flourishing phase, you know, there's still work that gets to be done or that needs to be done in the flourishing phase regardless. But mainly, I want this book to be applicable to my readers personally.
I love that. And it's such a beautiful depiction. I mean, God is also seen as the great gardener.
Yes.
Right? In our hearts, you know, he talks about soil. So I love it. I love the analogy. But you talk about something pretty significant that happened in 2017. Yet again, that year was just major for you in many different ways. You talk about it in the section of Grow in your book, where you literally were carjacked, but you could have also, I mean, if things didn't happen the way they did, you could have easily been sold into human trafficking. Talk about that moment that happened, because it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, actually, I till this day, I don't know what my perpetrator's goal was. I don't know, you know, what their intent was. The only thing I know is it wasn't good.
Yeah.
I have a whole chapter where I actually write about that situation in great detail. But long story short, I was surrounded by multiple armed men and tried to run away, but was told, get back in the vehicle, you're going with us. And that incident was very traumatic, was awful.
Yeah.
The most horrific part of that story was having nobody that would help me, having nobody that would stop, having nobody that would even listen or lend an ear. You know, it was peak hour traffic, broad daylight, people could hear what I was saying.
Wow.
And nobody would stop. And eventually, a young girl, she was 19 years old, stopped and laid me into her car, laid me to safety, this old little beat up little car. But she used what she had right there where she was at to lend a helping hand to someone. And I really think that she has changed such a big part of the trajectory of my life and have inspired me to be that girl for women around the world.
Yes, and you totally have it. And I just have to say, girl, first off, you were running in 6-inch heels. And then secondly, secondly, you punched the guy in the throat so hard, that's eventually what let him let you go.
In a dramatic situation when, you know, it's so hard to know what to do in a situation like that. My dad had sent me on numerous safety driving courses, women empowerment courses, self-defense courses. And in that moment, I remember two things. I mean, I learned so many self-defense techniques throughout my life. But in that moment, I remember two things. One, don't ever go to the second destination, because whatever's going to happen right here in this studio is not going to get better somewhere downtown in some dark alley. And the second thing, one, I tried fleeing. That didn't work. So fight, flight, or freeze. Freezing wasn't an option for me. I wanted to get out of there, and I realized my only option I had left was to fight my way out of it. And I did the only thing I knew how in that moment to buy me a window of opportunity to get away, and thankfully I did.
Girl, I have to give you your flowers and your kudos. I mean, that truly was so courageous of you. And I know that you also did the Unbreakable conferences, and you just continue to be such a light for so many women. We could literally talk for hours, but the last question I wanted to talk about is obviously you and your husband. You guys are just amazing people doing amazing things. How have you guys both been able to just combine, you know, your passions and your purposes?
Yeah, I love that you asked, because I love talking about him. It's one of my favorite humans in the whole wide world. You know, I'm so thankful for the way that Tim and I have been brought together. You know, there's so many ways that our lives have been aligned before we ever even met in person. My little sister that was born with severe special needs and disabilities, she was our little matchmaker through some of the work that the Tim Tebow Foundation does with Night to Shine. It's a worldwide celebration for people just like my little sister. And we have them in every state all around the country. It's our favorite night of the year. So when I first met Tim, funny story, I had never heard his name, but I had heard of Night to Shine before. So I just knew,
hilarious.
Yeah, I just knew Tim as the Night to Shine guy.
You know, not the football player.
No, no. And I just got to know him, and most importantly, the love that he has for Jesus and the love that he has for people, especially people just like my sister. And today, in collaboration with the Tim Tebow Foundation, we get to fight for people all around the world in their deepest, darkest hour of need, and hopefully bring some faith, hope, and love to them.
Yes, I love it. Oh my gosh, Demi, thank you so much for being here today. And thank you so much for this book. It's so good. Like, you talk about so many different things, and I just know it's going to help a lot of women. So thank you. God bless you.
That's my prayer.
Yes, yes.
Appreciate it.
All right, everyone. Well, Demi-Leigh Tebow's book is called A Crown That Lasts, and it's available wherever books are sold. And we will be back with more of 700 Club Interactive right after this.